Good afternoon, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi commissions Winningham International Seaport in southern state of Kerala, says country's coastal states and port cities will become key centres of growth for a developed India. More global leaders call Pakistan to act against homegrown terror. US Vice President J.D. Vance says Pakistan should cooperate to ensure terrorists operating in its territory are hunted down. In the first major staffing shake-up of the second term, Donald Trump replaces Mike Waltz with Marco Rubio as National Security Advisor, also removes the Deputy NSA. Apple shifts production to India to mitigate potential tariffs. CEO Tim Cook says majority of iPhones sold in the US in the current quarter will come from India. Waves 2025 hosts global media dialogue with delegates from over 60 countries. India's Information Broadcasting Minister Ashwani Vaishnav emphasizes on collaboration between government and creators. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the southern state of Kerala today and dedicated to the nation Winningham International Deepwater Multipurpose Seaport worth 8,900 crore rupees. It is the country's first dedicated container transshipment port that represents the transformative advancements being made in India's maritime sector as part of the unified vision of Viksit Bharat.
इस सी पोर्ट को 8,800 करोड़ रुपीस की लागत से तैयार किया गया है। अभी इस ट्रांसशिपमेंट हब की जो क्षमता है वो भी आने वाले समय में बढ़कर के 3 गुनी हो जाएगी। यहां दुनिया के बड़े मालवाहक जहाज आसानी से आ सकेंगे। अभी तक भारत का 75% ट्रांसशिपमेंट भारत के बाहर के पोर्ट पर होता था। इससे देश को बहुत बड़ा रेवेन्यू लॉस होता आया है। ये परिस्थिति अब बदलने जा रही है। अब देश का पैसा देश के काम आएगा। जो पैसा बाहर जाता था वो केरला और विलिंघम के लोगों के लिए नई इकोनॉमिक अपॉर्चुनिटीज लेकर आएगा।
Winningham Port, having strategic importance, has been identified as a key priority project which will contribute in strengthening India's position in global trade, enhance logistics efficiency and reduce reliance on foreign ports for cargo transshipment. Its natural deep draft of nearly 20 meters and location near one of the world's busiest sea trade routes further strengthens India's position in global trade. Later in the day, Prime Minister is to visit Andhra Pradesh, where he will inaugurate, lay the foundation stone and dedicate to the nation multiple development projects worth over 58,000 crore rupees in Amravati. In line with his commitment to ensure world-class infrastructure connectivity across the country, Prime Minister will inaugurate 7 national highway projects in Andhra Pradesh, will also dedicate to the nation railway projects aimed at enhancing connectivity and boosting capacity. PM will also lay the foundation stone of missile test range at Nagalanka in Andhra Pradesh, worth around 1,460 crore rupees. It will comprise a launch center, technical instrumentation facility, indigenous radars, telemetry and electro-optical systems, enhancing the country's defense preparedness. Prime Minister will lay the foundation stone of PM Ekta Mall at Madhuravada in Visakhapatnam. It has been envisioned with the objective of fostering national integration, supporting the Make in India initiative, promoting one district, one product, generating employment opportunities empowering rural artisans and enhancing the market presence of indigenous products. In other news, talking hard on Pakistan after the Pahalgam terror attack, US Vice President J.D. Vance expressed hope that Pakistan would work with India to track down terrorists who carried out the attack. In an interview with Fox Network, Vance made his public remarks on the attack, which left 26 people dead. Using the term terrorists, he said that Pakistan, to the extent cooperates with India to make sure that terrorists operating in their territory are hunted down and dealt with.
We hope, frankly, that Pakistan, to the extent that they're responsible, cooperates with India to make sure that the terrorists, sometimes operating in their territory, are hunted down and dealt with. That's how we hope this unfolds. We're obviously in close contact. We'll see what happens.
Notably, J.D. Vance and his family were in India on a 4-day visit when the carnage took place in Pahalgam. Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Thursday, in his first public remarks on the Pahalgam terror attack, vowed revenge, warned the terrorists. Shah said India will hunt each and everyone responsible for Pahalgam terror attack. He added that the worst is yet to come for the terrorists.
और मैं आज पूरे देश की जनता को ये बताना चाहता हूं कि 90 के दशक से कश्मीर में जो आतंकवाद चला रहे हैं उनके खिलाफ हमारे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का जीरो टॉलरेंस का नीति है। हम मजबूती के साथ अपनी लड़ाई लड़े हैं और आज वो ये न समझ ले कि हमारे 27 नागरिकों का जान लेकर ये लड़ाई जीते हो। मैं सभी आतंक फैलाने वालों को कहना चाहता हूं कि लड़ाई का अंत नहीं है, एक मकाम है। हर व्यक्ति को चुन चुन कर जवाब भी मिलेगा, जवाब भी लिया जाएगा।
Pakistan continues to violate the ceasefire by initiating unprovoked small arms firing across the line of control in different sectors of Jammu and Kashmir, as well as along the international border in Jammu's Pargwal sector. Meanwhile, Indian Army troops responded in a calibrated and proportionate manner. The ceasefire violations along the LOC in Kashmir follows a series of measures taken by India in response to the Pahalgam terror attack, in which terrorists shot dead 26 civilians in Paisaran Meadow. Large number of Pakistani nationals were stranded at the Atari border on Thursday as Pakistan didn't open the gates for its own citizens. As per the latest order from Ministry of Home Affairs, India has extended the deadline for Pakistani nationals to leave the country till further orders. In the order dated April 30th, Ministry of Home Affairs ordered that Pakistani nationals may be allowed to exit India to go into Pakistan from the integrated checkpost at Atari till further orders with due clearance. The portals of Kedarnath Dham, one of the 12 Jyotirling of Lord Shiva, were opened for the devotees amid chants of Har Har Mahadev. Additional security personnel along the Yatra routes and at temple premises have been deployed. To maintain decorum within the temple premises, authorities have imposed a ban on video recording and reels aiming to preserve the sanctity of the rituals and prevent overcrowding due to filming activities. Meanwhile, helicopter service for the 2025 Shri Kedarnath Dham Yatra commenced from Sonprayag in Uttarakhand, offering a convenient travel option for pilgrims. Uttarakhand Chief Minister has urged local residents and businesses to extend warm hospitality to the pilgrims. In other news, Angola President João Manuel Gonzalez Lourenço arrived on a 3-day visit to India. Accompanied by a high-level delegation, the visiting president will meet Defence Minister Rajnath Singh today. While on Saturday, tomorrow, he will be accorded a ceremonial welcome at the forecourts of Rashtrapati Bhavan. He will hold discussions with President Draupadi Murmu, who will host a banquet in honour of the visiting dignitary. President Lourenço will have a delegation-level talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. A number of MOUs agreements are expected to be signed during the visit, which shall give a fillip to bilateral relations. This is President Lorenzo's first ever bilateral state visit to India. A visit of President of Angola to India is taking place after 38 years. The visit comes at a time when India and Angola are celebrating 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties this year. India and Angola enjoy warm and friendly relations built over the years. Both countries support one another's candidature at various multilateral fora, including the United Nations. India's Ministry of Culture, in collaboration with the International Buddhist Confederation, is for the first time holding an exposition of sacred Buddha relic of Sarnath in Vietnam during the United Nations Day of Vesak 2025. Relics were welcomed with a ceremonial reception, with Indian delegation led by Union Minister Kiran Rijiju in attendance. The relics will be in Vietnam for a period of 20 days from today. Will travel through 4 cities, including the Ho Chi Minh City, where the UNDV event will be held. Over 3 million devotees are expected to pay homage to the relics during the exhibition period. Vietnam is a country with a majority Buddhist population, and for them the relics are not just symbols but Buddha himself. The timing is also significant. It coincides with Vietnam's National Day and the Vesak Day celebrations. Some weather update. India's Delhi and the National Capital Region experienced relief from heat wave on Friday morning as severe thunderstorms and rains brought temperatures down. The India Met Department has forecast rains and thunderstorms for the next 3 days with a yellow alert issued for the national capital. Waterlogging has also been reported in several parts of Delhi, including Lajpat Nagar, R.K. Puram, Dwarka. This also led to significant disruptions in flight schedules at Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport on Friday, causing delays and diversions for several passengers. The airport confirmed that some flights were affected due to the inclement weather. Northwest India, including Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh and Himachal Pradesh, are expected to experience light to moderate rains and strong winds due to western disturbance. A dust storm accompanied with gusty winds is also very likely at isolated places over Haryana, Chandigarh, Delhi, Punjab and Rajasthan. And we're heading for a short break. There's more coming up.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DigitalIndia.
Now cut across to Waves 2025 in Mumbai for the session on Studios of the Future, putting India on the world studio map. Actor Amir Khan, American filmmaker Charles Robin, Indian film producer Ritesh Sidhwani, along with other eminent personalities, are participating in it.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to this absolutely power-packed panel discussion on the studios of the future and India's role in it. We could host an hour-long masterclass with each of these panelists on this subject itself. The fact that they've chosen to all sit together, collectively discuss the studios of the future as a panel in itself is a remarkable achievement from the organizers, of course. And I think it deserves another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. To give you a brief on what we're discussing, which is Indian cinema and film studios, it has an incredible history, isn't it? Most industries actually start from disorganized scratches and then move to more consolidated, organized setups. Indian cinema is the exact opposite in the sense that it actually started with deeply well-integrated studios that had control over distribution, exhibition, production. These were studios that had everyone from spot boy to the superstar of the times in their payroll. These were studios that made multiple films in a year. They had annual slates. And of course, I'm talking about the likes of Bombay Talkies, Imperial Studios,
40s, 50s and all that.
Yeah, and then there was, of course, there was a decline in the 40s, World War II onwards. So what really replaced that studio system was a more freelancer system, a star system where producers could spend their life's earnings trying to make one film, right? And of course, a lot of that has changed over time as well. And with America, and I'm going to start this conversation with Chuck Rowan. In America, of course, it's still 5 or 6 top studios that control the production line. You've been a producer, one of America's greatest producers over the last 40 years, Chuck. How do you think the American studio system has changed in all these years that you've been a filmmaker?
Well, when I was fortunate enough to start making films, it was the early 80s. Well, I guess it was the early 80s when I actually got my first film made. I pretended to be a producer in the 70s. And back then, most of the studios were in a lot of trouble because they had been making movies with larger budgets, and many of them didn't work. Like the Cleopatra movie with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton was a huge bomb for 20th Century Fox and almost went out of business. And Columbia Pictures also was having a lot of problems, and so they decided to make films with young filmmakers like Bob Rafelson and Peter Fonda, and they made movies like that, which actually turned out to be big hits. So one of the great things about the content creation business is that you have to be able to change your course, right? And do things that when something's not working, you try something else. And the business itself, right, has gone through changes because when television came out, they talked about that was going to be the death of the theatrical experience. And then when DVDs came out, and before that, videotapes, right, that was going to be the death of the theatrical movie business. And of course, there are those who think that streaming is going to be the death of the theatrical movie business. But as these last few weeks have shown, movie business can be very healthy if we make movies that people want to go see,
right,
as a group experience.
Right.
And I think what's really great as the world evolves with all kinds of creations, that we as filmmakers and producers and content creators have to also change with the times and do things that are going to enhance people's desire to not only stay at home and at the comfort of their own couch, but also realize that the group experience in a movie theater you can't duplicate.
Right. So, Chuck, one of the reasons why I asked you this question also, and it's very relevant to India and India's entertainment scene and the topic at hand, is, when you look at your box office receipts over the years, it'll probably be above $10 billion, right? What percentage of that came from American viewers and what percentage came from outside America? And has that ratio, what's been the ratio like over the years where America became actually global cinema?
Well, there's no question that when I started making films, the international box office was much less than the domestic box office, and I'll call the domestic box office the US and Canada, right? Because if you're releasing a movie in the US, you better be releasing it also in Canada. Back in the 80s, and I'm not saying this with any real knowledge, but the feeling was certainly over 50%, maybe even as high as 60% of the box office at that point in time was US or US and Canada. And I would say that's inverted now, right? But, you know, there are movies that come out and, you know, you find that 50% or more is still domestic. The first Wonder Woman, for example, even though it did over $800 million in worldwide box office, the box office was more 50-50 than 60 or 65-35.
Right.
But as a general rule, it's now somewhere between 60
It's an inverted situation. And, you know, one of the things that people always said why American cinema, or Hollywood as it were, manages those economies of scale is because they make movies for the world. Whereas Indian cinema, for, you know, however big it gets, it's still Indian audiences mostly and Indian diaspora across the world. Has that changed a little bit in terms of numbers? I'm coming to you, Dinesh, in the sense that when you look at numbers pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, I'll take your example of your own film, say Stree. Stree would do, and you would know the numbers best obviously, but it would be say about 180 to 200 crore. But when you make a Stree 2, it crosses 800 crore. It's the same film in a sense, the same franchise, but it's 4 times post-pandemic. Likewise with Chava, if I'm not mistaken, that was also hitting about 800 crore plus, something that we hadn't seen before. It wasn't common. Does that allow you as a producer an economy of scale where you can actually up your budget? Of course, there's risk, but there's risk in everything.
So I think I'll divide your question into 2 parts. If you look at what Chuck was saying about American films, they have spent time and effort to build an international market. It requires focusing on it. I'm talking about beyond Indians, and it requires money. So we'll need to do that. We don't have that organized. Like everyone says, content is king, but a very wise man told me distribution is God. So I don't think our films reach there, for which we'll have to work on it. Yeah. The second part is the content of it.
Yes.
I think we're in a very interesting space. I think any example that you take of content from a region breaking out in the world first explodes in that region. I think post-pandemic, we're finally getting our act together. You know, we are understanding that stories need to be made for the common man. You take the example of Stree and Chava. I don't think cities come to the theater on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm talking about main cities.
Really?
I think they wait till, you know, all of us here wait to know for sure it's good because it's expensive, it requires time, and we come later. So people in smaller towns are coming in, and in the last 10 years, we are not aspirational to the West. We want stories about ourselves. And we are the only country that has such a rich culture. But we as filmmakers somewhere stopped looking. I think Stree and Chava are examples of stories in our own culture, as local as it gets, and they've exploded. The second step, when films do that kind of business in your own market, is you have the capital to expand. So we are attempting to make, you know, Mahavatar, which is probably the largest film we've ever made, and we want to make it, you know, there is the technology available to make a world-class film.
Right.
And because the films have worked, you are willing to take that risk.
Right.
But then again, we'll have to work on the distribution.
Absolutely.
I think another thing that can help us go international is if collaboration. So just to throw it out there, if in the pre-climax of Stree, for 5 minutes you had Spider-Man, you're going to explode. But is that possible? You know, but every big brand is collaborating. Everybody wants India. So if there is a swap like that, we can go international and they get our indigenous market. So I think it's right there. Hopefully in the next 2 years, we're going to really push it to, you know, change that ratio, because our ratios, except a few examples, are 80-20. So to go there, we'll need to push quality, and we'll need to make our content go global through distribution.
Right, right. Would the same thing apply, Namit, to technology. Because one of the things that people have always said over the years is that the American tentpole looks the way it does is because it has that kind of, global power to sort of power through that kind of investment in technology. Our VFX is not the same level as them because our number of audiences is not the same. Would it apply the same? I know you tried that with Brahmastra as well. You put in the best that you can in terms of the way it looked, VFX-wise. But is that something that would be easier to do when those numbers are much bigger, even if it's domestic market first?
I think technology is ultimately a tool in the hands of the filmmaker. And it comes back to, as Chak and Dinu are saying, about the vision. What is the film that you want to make? What's the story you want to tell? And the greater the vision, the greater the aspiration, that's where technology comes in to really connect that to the world.
Right.
The point of what we are all doing with leveraging tech is to make sure that we give people that experience when they come to the cinema.
Right.
To experience a story, to experience something that is only beyond imagination. That's the power of being in the movie business.
Right.
And the more we leverage that, I think the more...
Right, because there was a point where our VFX looked so substandard, but even in the smallest towns, they're exposed to the best in the world in any case. They watch the same Hollywood movies that all of us do. But when you see a Bahubali, it looks world-class in its own way. Is that something that's possible? Because Bahubali can bring those numbers as well.
See, I think it's not, to be honest, it's not because of visual effects that Bahubali does the numbers it does. I genuinely believe it's great storytelling.
Right.
Because, when you go back and see Jurassic Park in 1993 or you see Bahubali now, it wasn't like they had the greatest budgets and, application of visual effects because...
It was still storytelling.
It was still storytelling.
Right.
That always transcends everything else.
Right.
But what we are saying is the promise to the consumer, the audience that's coming to the cinema, is they know that they will not get a second-tier experience. You're coming for a premium experience, you're paying the money, you're giving your time, you want to make sure that you're going to get the absolute best that's possible.
Right.
So when we get, I'll give an example of a film like Interstellar that we, not just won an Oscar for doing the best visual effects, but when a director like Christopher Nolan imagines that I'm going to show you something that there is no visual reference of in the world, like what happens to light when it travels through a black hole or wormhole does not exist even in scientific journals. So that's when, as a company, as people who created the art form of that experience, we were actually able to show science how this can transcend, storytelling can actually help science in that sense. And that's where, you're sort of creating something that you've never seen before. And that to me is the power of what technology can do.
Right.
If you can dream it, you can make it. And that's if you go with that view, then the promise to the consumer is that come in and watch it on the biggest screen in the greatest way that we intend to show it. And then they're coming in hordes and coming back again for more. Because that's a part that I think we're losing in our industry, that we've not been servicing that part of the aspiration of why we go to the movies. And that sort of is where technology can, be really helpful in bringing those stories to life.
Not technology for technology's sake is what you're saying.
No, because ultimately nobody wants a tech demonstration.
Right.
Nobody's interested in coming to a 100-foot screen to see how cool tech is.
Right.
I don't think that's what consumers care about.
Right. We'll come back to the studios now.
Sorry, I just want to make one more point.
Please.
So while we talk about that, but there's also tech that's involved in, let's say now, bringing, digital actors to life. There's, being able to, AI is really leading the way in how you can bring, actors of yesteryears, people who've gone away, actors of today. Like we can today make Amir be 25 forever.
Amir is 25 forever.
I am 25 forever. What are you talking about?
I thought you just celebrated your birthday a few weeks ago. So, but the point being that that sort of is the opportunity that you now have. That you can bring that's the fidelity of storytelling and technology that is available. And the same applies to how technology is used in distribution.
Tell them what you showed me in LA.
Yeah, so so we did a film called Here, which is Tom Hanks, who everybody knows is close to 70, and we brought him back to his screen age of 25 when he was a very young man. And I think if you see the visuals and the quality of what's been achieved is absolutely unprecedented. So the idea of now keeping someone like that, who's a great talent, in his form of what his fans would love to see and experience is a reality today. So you can use technologies like that to, I believe, do that for, the very vast and very rich, talent that we have in our country that have tremendous fan following.
I mean, of course, there was The Irishman where they used technology to make Al Pacino much younger in his younger years. They used the same thing with Robert De Niro, but which is very different.
That is much more, I would say that's not AI enabled. That's
no, not at
much.
all. Yes.
Now what we are saying is that the power of the technology is that what we create is AI is actually helping train what we call the models of on which you base your technology on by the actors themselves. So if we make a AI version of Tom Hanks, it's actually made of him. We're not doing an artistic representation of him.
Right.
So we're actually training the technology on what Tom Hanks was and is, and from his expressions to his features, everything is being built on his own data. And that is, to me, the real game changer in how AI can really help make it authentic for the future.
I mean,
you also demonstrated how it happens real time.
Yeah.
So I can be made to look like somebody else live.
And that, I didn't want to take over this time in the tech conversation, but yeah, since Amir saw that in detail, so we actually can have, and when I talk about actors that aren't alive anymore, as an example, you can actually have a stand-in actor and have, a digital version of them being put on while you're filming in real time and actually be able to film it like you would film a normal movie.
Right. I mean, just a few years back, making Irishman was so expensive that Scorsese had to go to Netflix, and Netflix decided to fund it because theatrical model would not allow it. And which brings me to the other conversation about studios. I mean, we talk about the traditional studios as we always have, but the fact is 2016 onwards, we've had new kind of studios that finance, distribute, exhibit, and of course produce films for their own platforms, and those are the OTT platforms in India since 2016. Lots of Indian content creators or producers, as you would call them, have really taken on well to Netflix's and the Amazon Prime videos and the Jio Hotstars of the world. One of them is obviously sitting here, Dinesh Vijan. You completely changed the model in a certain sense where you took on, I think Inside Edge would have been the first web series, as it were, to come out of India for Amazon Prime Video. You did Mirzapur. You were a theatrical production company, and then you became, in a way, a producer for the Amazons and the Netflix of the world. Was that a game changer for you as a filmmaker, Ritesh?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I think, what it did is, it did not change our drive for making films for cinema. That is still there, and if you ask me even now, I would only want to make movies for a theatrical experience. But what it gave you an opportunity which the streaming platform gave you is to tell different kind of content, right? You had an audience there which was not watching broadcast TV, but was consuming content from around the world. So you go out there and you could tell stories. I mean, that gave a birth to a lot of new talent behind the cameras, right? Writers' rooms started being set up. You had an opportunity for technical crew to coming on board, which you would ideally not hire them for films, for any, there were various. So there's so much of opportunity created for it. But the main thing, which is whether you tell a story in a theater, the soul, which is the writing, the film, the story, right? I think that it gave you an opportunity of telling different kind of stories. You could have characters which didn't need to end in 90 minutes or 2 hours or 2.5 hours.
Right.
So the entire format is very different where series are concerned. Also, what I think is that there is some benefit. What they did is suddenly what Dinesh was talking earlier about distribution model. Now, today, people have discovered Indian content. Whether, like Amir says, sometimes it's by accident or whatever, at least they're aware. So today, if an Indian film goes outside the diaspora, they're aware of it. The Western audience is aware because your content is available now in 200 countries.
Right. While they're flipping, they'll discover it. Right.
Yeah. So I'm saying they're at least aware of, okay, there is. So even if you go out and try, I think today, if you go and distribute a film which is for theatrical viewing and it's outside your diaspora, there is an opportunity for you.
Right. Right.
So
to go global, also I think RRR would be a great example of something that came on Netflix in the US. People saw it and then they wanted a theatrical release. And so then it went to theaters in the US, and then of course there was the Oscar story that happened. I'm coming to you, Ajay Bijli. You know, there is a saying that the multiplex industry in India is a one-man industry, and that one man is you. You know, you practically own most of the theaters.
I don't agree
screens, and you know, you don't have to agree. I'm just saying it. It's a rhetorical statement.
Check.
But you know, it is true that in your case and in the case of many other multiplex owners, the theatrical footfall has dropped and progressively dropped post-pandemic. And the reason given is the OTT, right? Which is not very different from the reason given in the 1980s when VHS came and people stopped going to theaters. But except that those were single-screen theaters, we didn't know as much. Your stocks also dropped, you know. So it's a hard one for you.
Tissue.
Do you think OTT is responsible for what we're going through right now, and do you think it's a phase?
I think I'm glad everybody's first, and you talk about the advantages of OTT.
Yes.
And I think Ritesh said something that, you know, it's given artists, creative community, a great platform to express themselves. Also, the content that got made, the films that got made, TV shows that got made, they get exposed to the whole world.
Right.
So I think even in India, when a lot of shootings were not happening during COVID, people were watching regional films. And when they came on the box office, when cinemas did open, suddenly they were doing well all over. So I think we have to also recognize that it's done a great thing for movie makers and creative community and the consumers, because even the threshold of storytelling has become very cutting edge now. And it's put filmmakers also on their toes that this is what the audiences want now.
Right.
You can't have a compromised, unengaging film now. It needs to be engaging because they've seen the best. So I think that's the advantage of OTT. However, I feel that it's not an either-or platform at all. So when people ask me, and I've been asked this question a lot, that is it eating into our business or something? It depends on how we handle it. If we handle the journey of a film properly. The journey of a film is that it needs to be first monetized theatrically. It must be, because that is still the biggest window. Unless the movies are commissioned only for OTT.
Right.
Okay.
So the originals, that's different.
If they are, that's one journey that should get completed fully. It must get saturated. After a period of time, PVOD should happen, which is pay-per-view. And again, because these people, these amazing filmmakers have spent a lot of money making these movies, and they should be monetized on the second journey. And what happens when you release the movie theatrically, the quantitative and the qualitative benchmark of the film gets set. Word of mouth, people get to know, wow, that's a great film.
Right.
Quantitatively, you get to know the box office collections and the monetizing potential of the film. Then it goes to PVOD, and then it can go to SVOD.
Right.
SVOD is straight away giving something for free.
Right.
I think, so that's how OTT has to be handled. Nothing is wrong with OTT, but it must, in the pecking order, let the film follow that journey, and then OTT should come. What's happened here is that straight away after theatrical, it is going, in 8 weeks, it's available for free, literally for free. So people, post-COVID habits have changed. So suddenly they get to know, okay, I'll wait. And also there was a study recently done by the Global Cinema Federation. People still don't think it's 8 weeks. They still think it's 4 weeks. And they say, oh, it's going to come anyway. So before the word of mouth comes, some movies are released on a platform. It's a platform release. It takes time for the word of mouth to carry. And you can't straight away have that movie available for free. So I think if we handle OTT well, there's nothing wrong with it. I think the whole ecosystem is going to prosper. Pre-COVID, the global box office chuck was $42 billion. To get into that, how do you recoup?
Where is it now?
It's about 32 billion or something.
Okay.
It still hasn't reached the pre-COVID
that's a lot of
level.
shaving off, right.
And that can only happen if we really handle this entire ecosystem of various platforms. It's good for all stakeholders and even human beings. Forget about the economic rationale.
Right.
It's also very good for us. I mean, we are all, as Aristotle said, social animals. We like to go out. We want shared experiences.
Sure.
So I think...
So I'm gonna come to you, Amir. And this is a straight and simple question. There are two things we've discussed so far. One is OTT versus theater. Where do you stand on it? Second is, how does one expand the reach and the market and the audience of Indian cinema, in particular, in your case, Hindi cinema, not just India, and what's held it back over the years? Ladies and gentlemen, Amir Khan, the floor is yours.
Well, I have always believed that in India, we have very few theaters. for the size of the country and for the number of people living in India, we have very few theatres. So just to give an example, and my data is usually wrong, so you correct me. But in India, we have around 10,000 screens. 9,200, so roughly 10,000. In the US, which is 1/3 our population, or maybe 1/4 our population, they have 40,000 screens. So they're way ahead of us, though they have less population. China has 90,000 or 100,000? 90,000. 90,000 screens in China compared to our 10,000. Now, even in this 10,000, half of them are in the south and half are for the rest of the country. So for a Hindi film, typically you have a maximum of 5,000 screens. Our biggest hits over the years, no matter which film it is, has had a theatrical footfall of 3 crore people or 3.5 crore people. Am I saying the right thing? That's what percentage of our population? 1, 2, 2%? So 2% of our population in a country which is recognized as a film-loving country, only 2% of the population watches our biggest hit in theaters. So where is the remaining 98% watching the film? So my belief has always been that we need to have a lot more theaters in India and theaters of different kinds. And there are so many districts, there are tracts of areas in India, vast areas, which don't have a single theater for people to watch films.
So I'm in my office. Huh? I better go to office now.
Yeah. You get to work.
No, you can open those theaters. I mean, who's stopping you?
You know, that's what he's saying. So I feel that one of the biggest issues that we have faced over the decades is just don't have enough screens. And according to me, that is what we should be investing in. According to me, India has a huge potential, massive potential. But that potential will only be realized when you have those point of sales across the country. If you don't, then I just can't watch the film. I can hear about it. For example, if I'm living in the Konkan area, there's no theater there. I can hear about the film. I can see the chatter online, but I can't watch it. There's no way I can watch it unless I go piracy. So in a legal manner, it is not possible for me to watch the film. That's a very unfortunate situation. So the first thing we need to do is we must have more screens. We have a lot more potential for screens in India.
Right. And the second question I asked you, where do you stand in the OTT versus theater debate?
Well, I just feel that, you see, earlier films would come in theaters and then I remember many years back, it would be a year later, it would be on satellite. Then it became 8 months later on satellite. Then it became 6 months later on satellite. So what happens is I have a choice as an audience that, okay, I can watch the film in the theater as it releases, or I can wait 6 months and watch it on satellite. Today, what is happening is that, and I've said this in one place earlier, if I'm selling you this, whatever is in my hand, and we sell so many products in the world, I want to know if any product has this business model. Here is something I'm selling you, please buy it from me, I tell you. Buy it from me for 10 rupees, 100 rupees, whatever the cost may be. And if you don't, I'll come and drop it at your house after 8 weeks. This is the business model we are currently following. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because when a film is releasing, I know I can go to the theater and pay for it, or I can wait for it to come on OTT and I can watch it. I've already paid for it. So, if I have to be very honest to my audience when I'm marketing my film, I have to tell my audience that, guys, my film is releasing. But all those people who are on this particular subscription, on this particular OTT, they've already bought my film. They don't need to come to the theaters. The ones who are not in this OTT, please come and watch my film. This is my communication that I'll have to make in all honesty, which is a very awkward communication. So according to me, that window is too small. That between theatrical and OTT, you're killing your own business. If I tell you buy a Maruti car, and if you don't, I'll drop it at your house after 4 weeks. Why will you buy it? You will say, yes, drop it at my house after 8 weeks. I'll wait. And in a price-sensitive country like India, this matters a big deal. So I seriously feel that you have to, this is something that needs to be looked at, in my opinion.
Right.
So it's just a very funny business model. And then often in discussions that we have, in film, when we meet, we're like, why are films not doing well? Hello? You're telling the audience don't come. That's why they're not doing well. I mean, usually it goes into, but we are not making good enough films. I'm saying that is a separate topic. Whether your film is good or your film is bad, this business model doesn't make sense to me. If I make a very good film, this business model still doesn't make sense to me. So I'm saying irrespective of quality of film, because that is a separate topic entirely.
Right.
Remove that from the business aspect of it. I make a good film, I make a bad film, doesn't matter. What is my business model? Which according to me, currently, it's a very faulty business model, in my opinion.
No, first of all, this is music to my ears. Absolutely. So up stock, maybe there'll be some healthy movement after this. Anyway, no, I was just want to make one point about what Amir said about cinemas. Definitely.
And mind you, I have nothing against OTT. I think as a consumer, it's great. I get to watch thousands of content for a small fee. So it's a great innovation. It's a great platform. I think it should be used well. And as a creative person, I might even want to go straight to OTT if I'm making a long form content. I might decide, this, I don't want to be in theaters. I want to go straight and offer it to films, the audiences on that platform. I think each platform has its own benefits and strengths, but they should be used well. And, you shouldn't, ideally the pipeline should be smooth, where you're not eating into your own business each time.
No, the only point I was saying was that about cinemas, the number of theaters, definitely there's a dearth of cinemas. But I just feel the gap is not that large, because when you talk about China, we did a bit of a study. So 10,000 locations are there. And India's got about 8,000 locations. So if you just go by locations, so the location gap is not much. Secondly, I agree that regional spread more is towards south. But at the same time, these 5,000 screens have got 1,000 seats each. Whereas the 1,000 screens of a screen of China is 250 seats. So the capacities, so India's got about 40 lakh seats already installed. Shows we play is about 4.5 shows. So you can say about 1,80,000 shows. That's the seating capacity available on a daily basis. And last year, if I give you data, while we need to build cinemas, I agree with everyone, and I think we need to make them very carefully in the pockets where, the cinemas are not available. Last year, 2024, at 134 rupees ATP, all India, because 12,000 crores is our box office, cinemas ran at 16% occupancy. 1/6. Only 88 crore people went to watch movies, as opposed to 1.2 billion. The population of this country was the, obviously you have frequency of people going out. So we've had a big fall post-COVID of number of people who are going. So at 16% occupancy, how will the business make money?
How do you, एक यहाँ पे लोग बात कर रहे हैं कि सिनेमास बंद हो रही हैं, लोग आ नहीं रहे हैं, सारे सिंगल सिनेमास बंद हो गए, आप बोल रहे हैं और बनाओ.
Feast and famine नहीं होना चाहिए.
I usually say very strange things.
But also I think what Ajay is saying is that, maybe in certain, because we've been obviously studying this, and there are pin codes, right, where we have data, right, where there is a demand for going to, see what form of indoor entertainment, air conditioned, looking at weather, looking at options and choices we have, and in these, looking at the smaller towns, what kind of options do they have? They don't have too many options. Now, if you build a cinema there, the footfalls there will increase. I think when we talk about China's example of an average, I think now they're at about 25 to 30 screens for 1 million people. We are still at 5 screens to 1 million people. But they opened up screens where there was a demand. Maybe we have 1,000-seater screens, but the demand there in the city is lesser. So I think...
Like, for example, in Punjab, if I'm not mistaken, most of the theatres are in Gurgaon and in Chandigarh. But not in the rest of Punjab, am I right?
You mean Haryana?
Ludhiana, Amritsar, वगैरह में.
But I'm saying that there are large tracts in India where districts, in that whole district there's not a single theatre. So that's where you need to build them. Not in the same cities. मतलब दिल्ली में भी और मत बना,
मेरा point था consistency of content which engages. But I think consistency of content that engages with the consumer is very critical. What we are finding is there's a feast and famine happening after COVID. Either you have movies, like 7 movies did more than 500 crores business. So the demand is still insatiable. Pre-COVID, only 1 movie did 500 crores business, above 500 crores business. So it's just that what's happening is you have feast. Suddenly a big movie comes, hits a jackpot, and suddenly there is a complete famine.
Watching the Waves session, discussing the manner in which production, OTT and film theatres can work together in promoting the creative culture in the country, the business part of it being deliberated by icons of Indian cinema, also from the production side. We're heading for a short break. There's more coming up.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
गर फिरदौस बर्रुए ज़मी अस्त हमी अस्तो हमी अस्तो हमी अस्त Jammu and Kashmir, nature's finest works. A land of verdant valleys, pristine lakes, striking autumns, unforgettable majestic beauty. A place of unwavering devotion. Whole
Welcome back. You're watching News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. On the second day of the Waves 2025, India hosted the inaugural Global Media Dialogue session on Friday. It brought together delegates from over 60 countries, marking significant step in positioning India at the forefront of global media and entertainment discourse. Addressing the event, Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwani Vaishnav discussed 3 anchor points for the session, including creativity, culture and collaboration.
Creativity transforms imagination into shared experience. As a government, we must provide a fair chance for everyone to showcase their story to the world. We must incentivize local content promotion and enforce IP rights in a proper framework, among other things that we need to do in creativity.
The minister also stressed on the importance of collaboration between the government, creators, to make a mark, underlining the fact that no one stakeholder can act alone.
Culture inspires creativity and it connects people across borders. We must support policies that preserve and promote all cultural forms. Focus is shifting towards local stories, the local culture, and we aim to build people-to-people and country-to-country exchanges.
That's all we had in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan this QR code and download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.